I never thought I'd be the main character in a story like this. You wake up one day thinking your life is normal, that you have a loving girlfriend, good friends, a stable job. And then, in an instant, you realize it was all a lie. That was exactly what happened to me. 3 years together. 3 years of trust. And in just one single moment, everything shattered. The woman I loved had been cheating on me. But what hurt even more than the betrayal itself was the way she confessed. Not with guilt, not with regret, but with a smirk. I needed a real man, she said, like my existence was some kind of joke. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But wait, it gets worse. It wasn't just the cheating. When everything came to light, I thought at least I had my friends to lean on. I was wrong. They took her side. Not one. Not two. Almost all of them. The people I thought had my back, the ones I'd shared my life with, now looked at me as if I was the problem, as if they'd seen this coming all along. I didn't yell. Didn't argue. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I just smiled, grabbed my keys and walked out. And the next morning my phone blew up. 32 missed calls. Dozens of messages. A storm of notifications on social media. But in that moment I realized something. I should have seen this coming. The signs were all there. I was just too blind to notice them. It started small, little things I brushed off. Allison, my girlfriend, started working late more often. I didn't think much of it. Everyone has busy seasons. Then came the new perfume. Expensive. A scent I'd never smelled before. Still, I convinced myself it was nothing. Then new clothes started showing up in her wardrobe. Designer clothes, things that were definitely not her usual style. And then, her phone. She used to leave it lying around. She'd borrow my charger, she never had a passcode. And then, suddenly, it was always locked. Always face down. Always within reach. That was weird. But I wasn't the jealous type. Never had been. So I let it go. Then it got worse. She started pulling away when I hugged her. Like physically flinching when I touched her. She started stepping out to take work calls. More and more girls' nights, with friends I'd never even heard of. And every time I questioned it, you're being paranoid. Why are you so insecure? God, can you stop overthinking everything? So I trusted her. I told myself I was imagining things. Until one night when the universe forced me to wake up. I was sitting in the living room, folding laundry, the TV playing in the background. Her phone was on the coffee table. It lit up. A text message from someone named Jay. Miss you already? Last night was. I didn't even need to read the rest. My stomach dropped. You ever have that moment where your brain already knows the truth, but your heart refuses to believe it? That was me. I sat there staring at the screen, my mind racing. I didn't want to be that guy, the guy who goes through his girlfriend's phone. But in that moment, it felt like the universe was screaming at me to open my eyes. That night, she walked in like nothing was wrong. She went straight to the kitchen, making herself a smoothie, humming a song. I leaned against the doorway, my heart pounding, my throat dry. But my voice? Steady. Who's Jay? The second she turned off the blender, I saw it. The slightest hesitation. The tension in her shoulders. But then, she did something that made my blood run cold. She smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not even a guilty one. No. A full-on smirk. Wondering when you'd finally catch on, she said, sipping her drink like she hadn't just shattered my entire world. Felt like a bad movie. Like this wasn't real life. So, you admit it? I asked. Oh yeah, she said, casual as. Oh, Jay is my boss. And yeah, I've been sleeping with him for the past 2 months. No shame. No regret. Just pride. And then she hit me with this. I needed a real man. Someone who knows what he wants and goes for it. Not someone who spends his weekends playing video games with Jacob and watching stupid movies. 3 years together. And that's how she saw me? That's what she really thought of me all along? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. But the worst part? She wasn't done yet. Oh, and by the way, Chloe's known for weeks. So has Jacob. Most of our friends, actually. I just stared at her. What? She laughed. They understand. Jay can actually provide a future. Not just dreams and excuses. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, Opened my group chat with Jacob and Chloe. Me, is this true? You all knew? Jacob responded first. Jacob, bro, you're great, but Allison deserves someone more established. Don't take it personally. Then Chloe. Chloe, we didn't want to hurt you, but maybe this is the wake-up call you need. I felt my chest tighten. These people I thought were my friends had known all along, and not one of them told me. Not one. I looked up. Allison was still standing there, still smirking. She was waiting for me to explode, to break down, to prove I wasn't a real man. Instead, I smiled, a real, genuine smile. And without a word, I walked to our bedroom, grabbed my go bag, my laptop, my keys. As I passed through the kitchen, she finally spoke. Where are you going? She demanded. Out, I said simply. And before she could say another word, I was gone. But that was just the beginning. Because what happened next? She turned the whole world against me. I turned off my phone for 2 days. 48 hours of silence. No texts, no calls, no scrolling through social media. Just me, a cheap motel room on the outskirts of town, and the realization that my entire life had just gone up in flames. I wasn't running away. I just couldn't bring myself to deal with any of it yet. When I finally powered my phone back on, it felt like opening a floodgate of chaos. 32 missed calls. 47 unread messages. Allison's name dominated my screen, along with a few from Jacob, Chloe, and numbers I didn't recognize. But what really caught my eye? The sheer amount of notifications from social media. Something was wrong. I opened Instagram first. Allison had been busy. Her stories were filled with long, emotional posts, each one carefully crafted to paint me as the villain. No one should ever feel trapped in a relationship where they're constantly belittled and controlled. It took me years to find the courage to walk away. Emotional abuse is real. Just because there aren't bruises doesn't mean there isn't pain. To anyone struggling in a toxic relationship, you are not alone. You are stronger than you think. And the comments? A nightmare. Proud of you, Queen. Stay strong. He always gave off weird vibes, not surprised. I always knew something was off about him. I kept scrolling, feeling my stomach twist with every post. Then I saw the video. Allison, sitting in our apartment, the apartment I left for her, eyes red-rimmed, face blotchy as if she had been crying. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I never wanted to talk about this publicly, but I need to tell my truth. Pause. She sniffled, looking down. 4 years I was in a relationship where I felt trapped, controlled. He would monitor my every move, question me constantly. It wasn't just emotional, it was financial too. He made me split everything 50-50 while he hoarded money, knowing I made less than him. I was drowning, but he didn't care. And when I finally stood up for myself, when I said I deserved better, he snapped. I stopped the video. She made more money than me. She was the one who insisted on splitting things evenly. And as for the he snapped part, I literally just packed my bags and left. Yet somehow she had managed to spin everything into a sob story where she was the victim. I checked Facebook. It was even worse. Mutual friends, people I had spent years with, were publicly supporting her, sharing her posts with captions like, "So proud of you for speaking up, and no one deserves to go through this." I wasn't just the bad guy in our breakup. I had just been canceled. I needed air. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and left the motel, heading toward the one place that always felt safe, a little coffee shop downtown that Allison hated. She always said their coffee was too bitter, their pastries too dry. It was one of the few places I was sure I wouldn't run into anyone we knew. I stepped inside, letting the warmth of the cafe wrap around me. The barista behind the counter glanced up, her expression shifting the moment she saw my face. Hey, she said hesitantly, her usual friendly demeanor noticeably absent. Hey, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Large black coffee. She nodded, avoiding eye contact, punching my order into the register without another word. I paid, stepped aside, and that's when I noticed it. The stairs. A couple sitting by the window exchanged looks before whispering to each other. A guy scrolling through his phone near the pickup counter stole a glance at me, then quickly turned back to his screen. I checked my reflection in the glass. Same hoodie, same tired eyes, same guy I had always been. So why did it feel like I had walked into a crime scene? My phone buzzed. A text from Gemma, a coworker I hadn't heard from in months. Gemma, hey, you might want to check your email. Something's going around the office about you. My stomach twisted as I unlocked my phone and pulled up my inbox. There it was. A company-wide email with the subject line, "Fostering a safe and respectful work environment." I skimmed the email and my hands clenched into fists. No names were mentioned. But the timing wasn't a coincidence. Allison had escalated things beyond social media. She wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. She was trying to ruin my entire life. I took my coffee and left without saying a word. Back at the motel, I paced the room, scrolling through endless posts, messages, and comments. It wasn't just my coworkers whispering. It was everywhere. People I hadn't spoken to in years had jumped in, adding their voices to the chorus of support for Allison. No one had even asked for my side of the story. I needed answers. I opened my messages and, against my better judgment, typed out a single text. "Me, why are you doing this?" A few minutes passed before my phone buzzed. "Allison, doing what?" "I'm just speaking my truth." I clenched my jaw. Speaking her truth? She was lying through her teeth and she knew it. Another text followed. "Allison, look, I didn't want it to get this far. But people asked what happened and I had to be honest. Maybe if you had been honest with yourself about who you really are, things would have been different." I stared at my screen. Every word, every sentence was calculated. She wanted me to snap. She wanted me to say something she could screenshot and use against me. So I did the only thing I could. I deleted the conversation. I wasn't playing her game. But that didn't mean I was letting her win. Because now, I knew exactly what I had to do. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that smirk, that calculated tilt of her head, the way she twisted everything. The anger sat in my chest like a heavy stone, but underneath it was something worse. A cold, creeping realization that this wasn't just a breakup. This was war. By morning, my phone was still buzzing. The messages hadn't stopped. Some were just people picking sides, but others were more than that. Threats. Anonymous accounts, strangers, even some former friends had taken it upon themselves to make sure I paid for what I'd done. One message stood out. "I hope you rot for what you did to her. You don't deserve to walk free." I read it twice, trying to wrap my head around the sheer insanity of it. These people had no idea what really happened. None of them were there. But the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. I was guilty. I needed air. I threw on my hoodie and left the motel, heading toward my car. Had no destination in mind, just the urge to get away, even if it was just for a few minutes. But as I stepped outside, I noticed something. A car. Parked across the street. A black sedan with tinted windows. It wasn't a car I recognized, but it felt wrong. The way it just sat there, engine idling like it was waiting for something. Or someone. I took a step toward it, and as if on cue, the driver suddenly pulled away, tires screeching slightly against the pavement. I stood there, heart pounding. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But after everything that had happened, paranoia was starting to feel like survival instinct. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to clear my head. I ended up back downtown, where I found myself standing outside a coffee shop I hadn't been to in months. I walked inside, ordered a coffee, and for the first time in days, I let myself breathe. But then, just as I was about to take a sip, a voice behind me made my blood run cold. "Wow, you've got some nerve showing your face around here." I turned slowly. Chloe. Her arms were crossed, her expression one of pure disgust. I hadn't seen her since the night everything went to hell, but judging by the look in her eyes, she had already made up her mind about me. "Chloe," I said carefully. "Don't. Just don't," she snapped. "After everything you put Allison through, after the way you treated her, you think you can just walk around like you're the victim?" I stared at her, trying to process the audacity of what she was saying. "How I treated her?" I repeated. "You mean how she cheated on me for 2 months and then publicly trashed my entire life?" Oh my God, do you even hear yourself? Chloe scoffed. You were emotionally abusive, dude. You controlled her, you gaslit her, you. Chloe, stop, I cut in. You and I both know that's not true. Then why would she say it? She challenged. I laughed, shaking my head. Because she needed a story. And you all just ate it up without asking a single damn question. For the first time, I saw hesitation flicker across her face. It was quick, but it was there. A tiny crack in the armor. But before I could press further, another voice cut in. Chloe, let's go. Jacob. He was standing near the door, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger. Not disgust. Something else. Something closer to a guilt. Chloe rolled her eyes, grabbing her coffee. Whatever. Just stay away from Allison. She's been through enough. And just like that, she was gone. Jacob lingered for a second. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but then seemed to think better of it. Without a word, he turned and walked away. I exhaled sharply. That wasn't just an argument. That was a test. Chloe had come here looking for a reaction, hoping I'd snap, that I'd say something they could use to justify the narrative they had already built in their heads. I didn't give it to them. And that meant something. Later that day, I went back to my storage unit to grab a few things. The place was mostly empty, just a few rows of metal doors and the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I was halfway through shoving some clothes into a duffel bag when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and there she was, Juliana, one of Allison's closest friends. She looked uneasy, kept glancing over her shoulder like she didn't want to be seen talking to me. We need to talk, she said in a hushed voice. I crossed my arms. Not sure what's left to say. Unless you came to tell me how I'm a manipulative, abusive piece of sh*t like the rest of your friends seem to think. She flinched. Look, I don't think what she's doing is right, okay? That's why I'm here. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. Juliana bit her lip, glancing around the storage unit before leaning in slightly. Jay isn't just her boss. His wife, she's connected. Really connected. And Allison has been telling her that you're unstable, dangerous, that you might try to hurt her. I stared at her. Why the hell would she say that? Because that's what she and Jay do. Juliana's voice was barely above a whisper now. Before you, there was another guy at work. Allison and Jay? They did the same thing to him. She dated him, cheated with Jay, and when it all went south, they ruined his life. He ended up leaving town. Deleted everything. Just disappeared. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Why are you telling me this? I asked carefully. Juliana hesitated, then exhaled. Because I helped her destroy that guy. And I can't do it again. My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't just a messy breakup anymore. This was something bigger. Something planned. And now I had proof. I sat in my car for a long time after Juliana left. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles had turned white, but I wasn't even aware of it. My mind was running through everything she had just told me, piecing together every little detail I had ignored before. This wasn't just some messy breakup. It wasn't even just about Allison cheating. This was something planned. Something orchestrated. And I was just the latest idiot to fall for it. The moment I got back to my motel room, I grabbed my laptop and started digging. I needed to find Mark, the guy Juliana mentioned, the one who had disappeared. I started by searching his name in connection to Allison's company. There were almost no traces of him. His LinkedIn profile was inactive. His old posts on social media had stopped abruptly about a year ago. No job updates, no pictures, nothing. It was like he had just vanished. But people don't just erase themselves unless they have a reason. So I kept looking. I searched old workplace reviews for Allison's company, digging through complaints and forums looking for anything that might give me a clue. Then, buried in a Reddit thread from almost a year ago, I found it. A post titled, "When Your Boss and His Mistress Set You Up to Fail." It was vague, no names, no company, but as I read through it, my stomach twisted. I was good at my job. I worked hard, hit my targets. But then my boss's favorite girl started paying attention to me. At first, it seemed harmless, just friendly conversations, inside jokes. But then the misunderstandings started. Projects I had completed would suddenly go missing. Emails I never sent were suddenly in my outbox. And the worst part? My boss had my back until he didn't. Because once she was done with me, once she got what she wanted, I was the problem. I was hostile. I was unstable. It sure didn't fire me outright, but they made my life a nightmare. Eventually I left. And I disappeared. It wasn't proof. Not yet. But it was too close to be a coincidence. I needed to find Mark. The next morning, I reached out to Gemma, my coworker, the one who had warned me about the email going around at work. She picked up on the second ring. "Jesus, I was starting to think you died," she said instead of a hello. "Not yet," I muttered. "Listen, I need to ask you something. Do you remember a guy named Mark who used to work with Allison? About a year ago?" There was a pause. "Yeah," she said slowly. "He left pretty suddenly." "Why? Did anything weird happen before he left?" Gemma hesitated, but then sighed. "Look, I don't know all the details, but I remember rumors. There was a whole thing about him making a female coworker uncomfortable. HR got involved. It was messy. But no one ever really talked about what happened. One day he was just gone." I gritted my teeth. Of course. Allison had done this before. "Can you get me his last name?" I asked. "Why?" "Because I think he and I have more in common than I realized." Gemma didn't ask any more questions. A few minutes later, she texted me his last name. I went back to searching, this time with everything I had. And after about an hour, I found it. A new Facebook profile. No profile picture, no post, just a name and a location. He had moved out of state. He had started over. I sent a message, keeping it short. "Hey, I know this is out of the blue, but I think we have a mutual connection. If your experience is anything like mine, I'd really like to talk." Didn't expect an answer. But a few hours later, my phone buzzed. "Call me." Mark didn't waste time with pleasantries. "So, it's happening again?" he said, his voice bitter. "It looks that way," I admitted. "Let me guess," he said. "She started off sweet, made you feel like the center of her world. Then she pulled away, made you feel like you were the problem. And now, she's ruining your life." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, that about sums it up." Mark let out a harsh laugh. "You're lucky, man. You got out before it got worse." "Worse?" I echoed. "Do you have any idea what they did to me?" he said. "They didn't just spread rumors. They fabricated emails, texts. Allison found messages from me that I never sent. They went to HR, told them I was a threat. I was escorted out of the building like a criminal. I couldn't even get another job in my field. No one would touch me. I had to leave the damn state." My blood ran cold. "And now she's with him again?" Mark asked. "Yeah." "Then listen to me very carefully. You need to get ahead of this. She's already setting the stage, and if you don't do something fast, you're going to end up just like me." I exhaled, rubbing a hand down my face. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with his wife," Mark said. "What?"
Mrs. J. She's the key. She's the one thing Allison and Jay can't control. And if she's reaching out to you, that means she already suspects something. You need to talk to her. And you need to do it before they make their next move. I thought back to the message on my phone. I already have a meeting with her, I admitted. Mark paused. "Then I hope you're ready. Because if she's anything like my boss's wife, she's not going to let this slide. And when she fights back, it's going to get messy." I let out a slow breath. Good. Messy was exactly what I wanted. That night, I barely slept. I kept going over everything in my head, replaying conversations, connecting dots. Allison and Jay had a pattern. They had been running this game for years, systematically destroying people's lives. And now, for the first time, someone was finally going to stand up to them. I had nothing left to lose. So I was going to make damn sure they lost everything too. Tomorrow I was meeting Mrs. J. And that was the moment everything would change. The next morning, I dressed carefully. Nothing too casual. Nothing too formal, just neutral. I didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but if Mark was right, this wasn't just about me anymore. Mrs. J had been watching, gathering evidence, and now she was reaching out. I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. She was already there. She sat at a corner table, perfectly poised, her fingers wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. She looked exactly like her profile picture, elegant, well-dressed, and every bit the type of woman who owned a room without saying a word. She glanced up as I approached, her gaze cool and assessing. "Michael," she said smoothly, gesturing to the seat across from her. "I appreciate your punctuality." "Mrs. J," I nodded, sitting down. "Please, call me Evelyn." She took a slow sip of her tea before setting the cup down with deliberate care. "I assume you know why you're here," she said. I exhaled, leaning forward slightly. "I have an idea, but I'd rather hear it from you." Evelyn studied me for a moment, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod.
"Very well," she said.
"My husband has been having an affair with your ex-girlfriend. And before you ask, yes, I've known for quite some time. This isn't his first indiscretion." She said it so matter-of-factly, like it was a simple business transaction rather than the crumbling of a marriage. "Then why are we talking now?" I asked. Evelyn folded her hands neatly on the table. "Because this time, I'm not looking the other way." For the first time, there was something behind her voice, a quiet kind of steel. "And why is that?" I pressed. Evelyn's lips curled slightly, but it wasn't a smile. "Because your ex-girlfriend is a liability," she said simply.
She reached into her purse, pulling out a small envelope, sliding it across the table to me. I hesitated before picking it up, carefully opening the flap. Inside were photos, screenshots of text messages, copies of expense reports, company funds funneled into Allison's personal accounts under the guise of client meetings. A paper trail of corruption. "This," Evelyn said coolly, tapping her fingers against the table, "is just the beginning. I've been collecting information for months. Emails, financial discrepancies, surveillance footage." I looked back up at her. "Why are you showing this to me?" Her expression didn't change. "Because you and I have a common goal," she said. "And right now you're the perfect catalyst for what comes next." The weight of her words settled over me. "You want to expose them," I said slowly. "Oh, I plan to," Evelyn murmured. "But timing is everything. And what I need is a public trigger, something that forces the company to act. And that's where you come in." I sat back, processing. She wasn't just trying to divorce her husband. She was setting up a goddamn coup. "You want me to go public," I realized. Evelyn inclined her head. "Eventually. But not yet. First, we let them dig their own graves. You, however, need to be prepared for what's coming." Her gaze sharpened. "Allison is going to escalate. She's going to make you the villain in ways you haven't even imagined yet. And once she realizes she's losing control of the narrative, she's going to lash out." I clenched my jaw. "So what do I do?" Evelyn sipped her tea, her eyes glinting. "You let her." I left that meeting with more than just evidence. I left with a plan. A real, structured way to fight back. But the next few days? They were pure chaos. Just like Evelyn predicted, Allison escalated. First, it was more social media posts. More fake stories. But then it got personal. I received an email from my landlord. "Michael, I just wanted to follow up. Allison mentioned some concerning behavior, and while I don't want to make assumptions, I need to ensure there won't be any disturbances at the property." She was building a case. At work, I started noticing whispers. People looking at me differently. The email from HR about workplace respect didn't mention names, but I could feel it. The tension. The unspoken accusations. Then on the fourth day, she showed up at my motel. It was around midnight. A knock on the door. I opened it, and there she was, mascara streaked, hair a mess, clutching a manila envelope. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. I leaned against the doorframe. "I don't see what's left to say." Allison swallowed hard. "Please, just let me in." I almost laughed. She was good. She knew exactly how to play the part, looking just broken enough to seem sympathetic, just desperate enough to make me second-guess myself. No, I said flatly. Her eyes flashed with something. Anger? Desperation? I couldn't tell. Fine, she snapped, thrusting the envelope at me. Then at least read this. I took it, cautiously flipping it open. My stomach twisted at what I saw. Screenshots. Photos. Private messages. Dirt. On me. On Jacob. On Chloe. On half the people in our old friend group. Years worth of collected secrets. I looked back at her. You're trying to blackmail me? She shook her head quickly. No. I just want you to stop. Call off whatever you're planning. We don't have to destroy each other, Michael. I stared at her, my grip tightening on the envelope. Then slowly I smiled. Go ahead, I said. Allison blinked. What? Go ahead, I repeated, tossing the envelope back at her. Burn every bridge you have left. Let's see how that works out for you. For the first time, real fear flickered across her face. She thought she could still manipulate me. Thought she still had control. She didn't. I closed the door in her face, listening as she stood there, breathing heavily before finally storming off. And just like that, I knew. The game was over. She just didn't realize it yet. The night of the gala, Jay walked in. Like he owned the world. Dressed in a tailored suit, Allison at his side, they were the power couple of the evening, untouchable, envied, admired. But they had no idea what was coming. Across the room, Evelyn moved with the same grace and composure as always. She didn't need to cause a scene. She didn't need to raise her voice. The trap had already been set. And Jay? He was about to walk straight into it. It started subtly, a shift in the atmosphere. A few whispered conversations. Board members glancing at their phones, then at Jay. His usual charm wasn't landing the same way. Allison noticed it first. What's wrong? She whispered, gripping his arm. Jay brushed her off. Nothing. Just business. But as the night went on, the tension thickened. Then it happened. One of the senior executives, someone Jay couldn't ignore, approached him with a cold smile and a firm handshake. Quite the evening, huh? The man said. Jay nodded, putting on his best confident grin. Always is. The executive's smile didn't waver. Interesting timing, too. With everything that's surfacing. Jay's expression froze. What do you mean? The executive simply patted him on the shoulder. You'll find out soon enough. Allison, standing beside him, shifted uncomfortably. Jay, what's he talking about? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Email from HR. Subject line, urgent, immediate meeting required. Another buzz. A text from one of his colleagues. Dude, what the hell is happening? Another buzz. We need to talk. Now. Jay's heartbeat slammed in his chest. His grip on his champagne glass tightened. Then from across the room he spotted her. Evelyn. She was standing near the entrance, effortlessly poised, a glass of wine in hand. She met his gaze, tilted her head ever so slightly, and then, she smiled. That's when Jay knew. He was F***. Allison felt it too. The shift. The way eyes were darting toward them. She pulled out her phone, refreshing her notifications, her face paling with every second. Then her breath hitched. Her group chat was blowing up. Chloe, Allison. WTF is this? Jacob, is this real? Tell me this isn't real. Her hands trembled as she clicked the link. Screenshots. Her texts. Her messages. Her own words, exposed. Conversations from months ago, laughing about the affair. Bragging about how she was trading up. Making fun of Jay's wife, Evelyn, behind her back. Every disgusting, manipulative thing she had ever said, all out in the open. Her stomach dropped. She turned to Jay. Something's wrong. We need to leave. Now. But it was too late. From the stage, the CEO tapped the microphone, silencing the room. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something important. His voice was measured, deliberate. We recently became aware of some concerning activity within the company. Financial misconduct. Conflicts of interest. Violations of workplace ethics. Allison froze. Jay went rigid beside her. We take integrity very seriously here, the CEO continued. Which is why, as of tonight, an internal investigation has been launched regarding specific individuals. We expect full cooperation. A beat of silence. Then murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jay wasn't moving. Allison's breathing became shallow. Fast. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But then, it got worse. Her phone vibrated again. A new message. From an unknown number. She clicked it open. Hope it was worth it. Her entire body went cold, because she recognized the number. It was mine. The fallout was instantaneous. Within an hour, Jay was pulled into a closed-door meeting with executives. His reputation shattered. HR was already drafting the paperwork. And Allison? She was left standing in the middle of the gala, watching it all unravel around her. She tried to talk to people to spin it her way, but no one would look her in the eye. "This is a mistake," she muttered. This is ridiculous. You believe them over me?" But no one responded, because no one believed her anymore. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. And me? I wasn't even there. I didn't need to be. I was back at my motel watching it all unfold in real time, because karma doesn't need a helping hand. It just needs an audience. Jay didn't leave the gala on his own. Security escorted him out. Allison followed, her heels clicking too fast against the marble floor as she scrambled to keep up with him. The moment they stepped outside, she grabbed his arm. "Jay, talk to me. What the hell just happened?" Jay jerked away from her touch, running a hand through his hair, pacing. His phone was buzzing nonstop, but he ignored it. His jaw was clenched so tight Allison thought he might break his teeth. "What happened?" Jay finally hissed, eyes blazing. "Are you serious right now?" "You happened, Allison. Those texts. Jesus Christ, do you have any idea what you've done?" Allison blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" "This is about you. They're coming after you, Jay, not me." Jay laughed, a short, humorless sound. "You really don't get it, do you? Those messages, Allison. Do you know who leaked them? Do you know who they make look worse?" Allison felt a lump form in her throat. I was venting, okay? That's not—" "Shut up," Jay snapped, stepping closer. "Just shut the hell up. Do you even understand what you were saying? Making fun of Evelyn? Calling board members idiots? Bragging about the money? They don't just see me as a liability now, Allison. They see you as a threat. You think you're walking away from this clean? No, you're done." Allison swallowed hard, her hands gripping her phone. No. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. "I can fix this," she whispered. "I can." "No, you can't," Jay said, stepping away. "I'm not going down with you." And just like that, he turned and walked off, answering his phone at last. Allison watched him disappear into the night, heart hammering. Then her phone vibrated. A new notification. Statement from Jay and Company regarding recent allegations. She clicked on it, eyes scanning the words again and again, but the message stayed the same. Jay had thrown her under the bus. Due to recent personal conflicts involving an external party, effective immediately, Allison, last name, has been relieved of all company responsibilities. We will not be commenting further. She felt like the ground had just disappeared beneath her feet. This wasn't just bad. This was catastrophic. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Corporate scandal. Senior executive resigns amidst workplace misconduct investigation. Gold digger girlfriend exposed in leaked texts. Public reaction turns brutal from the boardroom to the blacklist. The fall of Jay and Allison. The internet had turned on them. Jay had money and connections. He wouldn't be broke, but his reputation? Destroyed. No company wanted to touch him with a scandal like this. Hanging over his head. And Allison? She had nothing. Her phone calls went unanswered. The same friends who had rallied around her weeks ago were suddenly silent. No more sympathy posts. No more stay strong comments. Chloe, Jacob, everyone, they all distanced themselves. Allison tried to post a new statement, another tearful video. "I never meant for things to get this bad. I was manipulated. I made mistakes, but I'm the real victim here." But no one cared. The same people who had defended her were now dragging her in the comments. LMAO, the gaslighting continues. "I used to feel bad for her, now I just feel secondhand embarrassment. She played stupid games and she won stupid prizes." For the first time, Allison was experiencing what it felt like to be abandoned. She wasn't the center of attention anymore. She was a cautionary tale. As for me, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The motel TV played the news in the background, covering the scandal like it was some celebrity divorce. I didn't need revenge, they had destroyed themselves. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "Mark, you see the news?" Me, I saw. "Mark, feels good, huh?" I smirked, sipping my coffee. Me, I wouldn't know. I wasn't even there. Because the best revenge? Is watching people ruin themselves. By the time the dust settled, there was nothing left of the empire Jay and Allison had built. Jay was officially out. No job. No future in his industry. The scandal had spread too far, too fast. The company had cut him loose and his reputation was in shambles. You still had money, sure, but the thing about power? Once you lose it, people stop pretending to respect you. Evelyn made sure of that. The divorce moved faster than anyone expected. No drawn-out negotiations, no messy court battles. Jay didn't have the leverage anymore. He walked away with nothing but regret, while Evelyn? She got the house, the assets, and the company shares. She left him with exactly what he deserved. Nothing. And Allison? She tried to salvage what was left. She moved back in with her parents in another state, disappearing from social media overnight. Every post, every fake empowerment speech, every curated moment, gone. Because there was no one left to perform for. She burned every bridge she had. And when she finally needed someone, there was no one left. I wish I could say I felt something. Some sense of victory, some rush of satisfaction. But the truth? I just felt free. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wasn't waking up to chaos. My name wasn't being dragged through the mud anymore. I had won. Without ever needing to fight. I signed a lease on a new apartment the following week. A fresh start, a clean slate. New job, new people, no ghosts of my past lurking in the shadows. One night, as I was packing up the last of my things from the motel, my phone buzzed. A message from Jacob. Jacob, man, I should have had your back. I was wrong. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, without responding, I blocked his number. Cowards didn't deserve closure. A few days later, I was sitting at a cafe enjoying the quiet, when someone slid into the chair across from me. I looked up. Evelyn. She was holding a coffee, watching me with that same unreadable expression. You never thanked me, she said smoothly, taking a sip. I smirked. I never had to ask. She tilted her head slightly, considering me. Then for the first time she smiled. I suppose that's fair, she said, standing up. As she walked away, she paused just long enough to glance over her shoulder. Enjoy your life, Michael. You earned it. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.